In the high peaks of the Colorado Rockies, where the air gets thin and the wind bites with an ancient cold, forgotten towns crumble back into the earth. These are relics of a time when gold and silver promised fortunes, but the mountains themselves had the final say. While many of these mining camps are on the map, their histories recorded in faded photographs and dusty ledgers. There are whispers of places that were never documented, places that rose and fell in silence, left to the mountains without explanation. One story, in particular, gets passed around campfires and in quiet mountain lodges. It tells of a small, remote settlement, unreachable except by a faint trail that fades with every passing season. Some call it Hollow Creek, others Whisper Ridge, but no map bears its name. The tale is always consistent: a few wooden cabins, a collapsed mine entrance, and a silence so profound it feels unnatural. The most common version begins with a lone hiker who stumbled upon the town by accident. He'd been climbing for hours on an unmarked path, warned by a local that it was no longer maintained. When he finally reached a high plateau, he saw them, several structures, tilted and dark, but strangely intact. He said the quiet was what he noticed first. It was a heavy, pressing silence, as if the mountains were holding their breath. No birds, no insects, not even the distant echo of falling rock. His own footsteps sounded unnervingly loud. Curiosity pulled him toward the largest cabin. Inside he found the simple remnants of daily life: rusted pans, broken lanterns, and a cracked mirror leaning against a wall. It was ordinary, except for the dust, which lay in perfect, undisturbed layers. It felt like no one had set foot in that room for a century. But the mirror, that's what bothered him. He swore that as he looked into it, he saw a flicker of movement behind him, a slight shift of shadow. When he spun around, the room was empty. Many who claimed to have found this place mentioned the mirror. Some felt the temperature drop as they got near it. Others described hearing a faint metallic sound, like a pickaxe striking stone, coming from somewhere beneath the floorboards. Of course, none of this can be verified. But in the unfamiliar quiet of the high country, the line between imagination and fear blurs easily. The mine entrance itself is always described as collapsed. The wooden support beams are broken inward, not outward, as if something from inside had pushed its way out. That detail, of course, is pure speculation. One retelling describes a group of hikers who approached the mine and felt a rush of cold, stale air drift out from the darkness, even though the entrance was sealed. One said it smelled of wet stone and old metal. Another thought he heard a low, rhythmic tapping. As they stepped closer, the air grew still again. They left, and they left quickly. The most persistent part of the legend, though, concerns the cabin nearest the mine. It's often called the foreman's house, though there's no proof the town had any formal structure. Inside this cabin, the first hiker found a small wooden table with a single chair. On the table lay a notebook, its pages fused together by moisture. He tried to open it, but the paper just tore. He could only make out a single smudged word on the cover, starting with an R. Some say it was a name, others say it was a warning. But what happened next is what truly unnerved him. As he stepped out of the cabin, the air suddenly shifted. A cold, unexpected breeze swept across the clearing, carrying with it a faint sound like a whisper pressed too close to the ear. It wasn't a word, just a breath. He froze, and just as suddenly the wind stopped, the oppressive silence returned. He turned to go, but the path he'd followed up the mountain was gone. Every direction looked the same, just trees, rock, and the distant drop of the ridge. He circled the clearing, desperately retracing his steps, his panic rising with every minute. Eventually, he just picked a direction and walked, keeping the sun at his back. Nearly an hour later, he stumbled back onto the faint outline of the trail. When he dared to look back, he could no longer see the town. The mountain ridge looked solid and unbroken, as if nothing had ever been built there at all. This detail changes with each telling. Some say the town only appears at certain times of day or when clouds settle low across the peaks. This is folklore, of course. Yet the idea of a place appearing and disappearing in the Rockies resonates. Trails shift, landslides reshape entire valleys, and snow can hide landscapes for months. A forgotten camp could easily remain unnoticed for decades. Another local version involves two friends who found the town near dusk. Inside one cabin, they saw a metal cup lying on its side. One of them nudged it with his boot. The moment it moved, they both heard a sound from the mine, 3 slow, deliberate taps. They dismissed it as falling rock, but then it happened again. 3 taps, evenly spaced, measured, as though timed by a person. They ran. Skeptics argue these sounds are just temperature shifts in old wood or echoing rocks in a collapsed shaft. Colorado mines are notorious for producing unsettling noises, but those who believe the story insist the rhythm was too steady to be random. It felt intentional. One final variation tells of a traveler who camped near the site overnight. He claimed he was woken by the sound of footsteps circling his tent. They weren't heavy, but slow and dragging, as if someone unfamiliar with the terrain was walking across it. The footsteps made one full circle, then stopped. He waited, holding his breath, but nothing else happened. At dawn, he looked outside. There were no footprints, just strange marks in the dirt, like something had been pulled or dragged. Of course, there is no proof any of this ever happened, but the story persists because the mountains invite imagination. Their immense silence is the perfect canvas for shadows to feel closer than they should. For every cracking branch to sound like a footstep, Colorado's abandoned mining towns are real. Their histories are documented, their ruins visited by hikers every summer. But stories of the towns that aren't on any map refuse to die. Places swallowed by the mountains, where the past lingers in a way the present cannot touch. If there is any truth to this legend, it might be this. Some places hold echoes longer than others. Buildings collapse, paths vanish, and names fade, but something in the air remembers. And sometimes, the wind carries that memory like a whisper across an empty clearing. So, if you ever find yourself hiking deep in the Rockies, and you stumble upon a cluster of weathered cabins and a collapsed mine, maybe just pause and listen. If the silence feels too heavy, if the air seems too cold, if the shadows settle just a little too strangely around you, it might be wiser to just keep walking. Not because something will follow you, but because something might have been waiting there all along. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from the world's forgotten corners. Stay curious and stay safe out there.